In this mystery, in a city of art, money, and secrets, one murder shocked even the greatest detective. Everyone had a motive. Every secret could kill. But the truth was more twisted than anyone imagined. Who killed Victor Marsh? And why stick around? The answer will shock you. Let's dive into this mystery. It was a Tuesday in late October, and Nero Wolfe was doing what he does every Tuesday at 4 in the afternoon, sitting in his oversized chair behind his desk, working through his third bottle of beer and pretending to read a book on the cultivation of cypripedium, while actually just staring at the pages and thinking about dinner. Fritz was preparing trout amandine. The smell drifting from the kitchen had put Wolfe in the kind of meditative state that lesser men achieve through religion or prescription medication. I was at my desk near the door, typing up invoices for our last 3 cases and trying to ignore the fact that our bank account was comfortable enough that Wolfe would soon declare himself unavailable for new clients. When Wolfe has money, he becomes even more impossible than usual, which is saying something, considering his usual state involves refusing to leave the brownstone for anything short of nuclear war. And possibly not even then. The doorbell rang at 4:17, which I noted because Wolfe's schedule is sacred, and interruptions during his afternoon reading period are about as welcome as ants at a picnic or critics at an art opening. He didn't look up. No, I haven't answered it yet. Don't. It might be important. Nothing is important at 4:17 on a Tuesday afternoon. I am reading. Fritz is cooking. You are working. The world is ordered as it should be. Let it remain so. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, more insistent. The kind of ring that says whoever's doing the ringing isn't going away without a fight. Wolfe, I said, standing. Whoever that is, they're not taking no for an answer. Then they haven't met me. Went to the hall and checked through the one-way glass panel in the door. Standing on our stoop was a man I recognized immediately, Theodore Bannister, the art critic for the Times. He was in his 50s, distinguished-looking in that way that suggests expensive barbers and careful attention to detail, wearing a cashmere coat and an expression that combined urgency with the kind of barely controlled panic you see in people who've just realized they're in serious trouble. I went back to the office. Theodore Bannister, the art critic. Wolfe's eyes opened slightly. I don't know him. You know his work. He's the one who wrote that review last year calling modern art a conspiracy of charlatans designed to separate fools from their money. You quoted it at dinner for a week. Did I? A small smile. Then he has some merit. But that doesn't mean I wish to see him. He looks desperate, also expensive. Those 2 things usually mean money. Money we have, money we'll spend, and then we'll need more. I moved toward the hall. I'm letting him in. Archie, consider it an act of mercy. The man looks like he's about to have a stroke on our doorstep, and explaining that to the police would be more work than just listening to him for 5 minutes. Wolfe's lips pushed out, then pulled back the facial calisthenics that mean he's accepting the inevitable while making sure I know he's not happy about it. 5 minutes. If he cannot state his business in 5 minutes, you will escort him out. I opened the door. Bannister practically fell through it. Mr. Goodwin, thank God. I need to see Nero Wolfe immediately. It's urgent. Pulled himself together with visible effort. It's a matter of life and death. Whose life? Whose death? Mine, possibly. And he looked around like he expected assassins to be hiding in the coat closet. Can we speak inside? Please, I led him to the office. Wolfe had put away his book and was sitting with his hands interlaced over his center of gravity, looking like a Buddha who'd just been informed that enlightenment had been postponed indefinitely. Mr. Bannister, I said, this is Nero Wolfe. Mr. Wolfe, Theodore Bannister. Bannister sat in the red leather chair without being invited, which told me either he was too distracted to notice basic courtesy or he was too frightened to care. Mr. Wolfe, I'm being blackmailed, and the blackmailer has just been murdered. That got Wolfe's attention. His eyebrows rose approximately 1/16 of an inch, which for him was equivalent to jumping up and shouting, Hallelujah. Indeed, and you believe the police will suspect you of the murder? I know they will, because I was supposed to meet with the blackmailer tonight at 8 o'clock to make a payment. and because the blackmailer was killed this morning in my office building, and because he stopped, swallowed hard. Because I have no alibi for the time of death, no witnesses, and approximately 50,000 reasons to want him dead. Wolfe leaned back. Mr. Bannister, if you expect me to help you, you will need to be more specific. Who is blackmailing you? Why? And how much were they demanding? His name was Victor Marsh. He was a nobody, really. Failed artist. Occasional gallery assistant, general hanger-on in the art world. The kind of man who knows everyone's business and uses it to make himself feel important. And what business of yours did he know? Bannister's face went pale. 10 years ago, I wrote a review. Very positive review of an unknown artist's first show. Said the work was brilliant, groundbreaking, destined for greatness. The show sold. Out within a week, the artist's career was launched. Today, his paintings sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the artist is my nephew. It's my sister's son. I never mentioned our relationship in the review. I never disclosed that I had a personal connection. It's not illegal exactly, but it's unethical. If it became public, I'd lose my position at the Times. My credibility, my reputation, everything I've built over 30 years would be destroyed. And Victor Marsh knew about this relationship. He found out somehow. 3 months ago, he approached me with proof photographs of me and my nephew together at family gatherings, evidence of financial support I'd given him early in his career. He demanded $50,000 to keep quiet. Did you pay? I've been paying. $5,000 a month for the past 3 months, but last week he demanded the remaining $25,000 in a lump sum, said he needed it urgently, that if I didn't pay by tonight, he'd take his evidence to my editor. Wolfe poured beer, his movements deliberate. Now Mr. Marsh is dead. Killed this morning, shot twice in his office on the 3rd floor of the building where I work. The police are treating it as a robbery. His wallet was missing. Some valuables were taken. But Mr. Wolfe, I was supposed to meet him tonight. I was supposed to pay him. And now he's dead. And when the police discover that connection, they'll arrest you for murder. Wolfe drank. Mr. Bannister, who else knew about the blackmail? No one. I told no one. Couldn't the whole point was to keep it secret? Your nephew? Did he know? God, no. Daniel would be horrified. He built his career on talent, not on favors from his uncle. If he knew I'd compromised my integrity to help him, it would destroy our relationship. What about Victor Marsh's associates? Did he work with anyone? Have partners? Accomplices? Not that I know of. Victor was a loner bidder, resentful, always complaining that he should have been the one with the successful career, not the talentless hacks he saw getting rich and famous. Wolfe closed his eyes. Mr. Bannister, you say Mr. Marsh was killed? In your office building? Yes. The Hartley building on Madison Avenue. I have an office on the 5th floor. Marsh worked in a gallery on the 3rd floor, assistant work, nothing permanent. He used their office space when they didn't need it, and you were in your office this morning? Yes, from 9 until noon. Then I went to lunch. I didn't hear about the murder until I returned at 2. Building was full of police. That's when I learned Victor had been killed between 10 and 11, right when I was upstairs in my own office. Did anyone see you? My assistant saw me briefly at 9:30. After that, I was alone, working on a review. I didn't see or hear anything unusual. Wolfe opened his eyes and studied Bannister with the expression he usually reserves for particularly interesting beetles. Mr. Bannister, what do you want from me? I want you to find out who killed Victor Marsh. Before the police discover the blackmail and arrest me for a murder I didn't commit, and if I discover that you did commit it, then I'll deserve what I get. But Mr. Wolfe, I swear to you, I didn't kill Victor Marsh. I was being blackmailed by him, yes. I was desperate to make him go away, yes. But I didn't kill him. I'm not a murderer. I'm just a foolish old man who compromised his principles for family and is now paying the price. Wolfe was silent for a long moment. Then he said, my fee is $100 per day, plus expenses, with a retainer of $500. I make no promises except to discover the truth. If the truth implicates you, I will not suppress it. If the truth exonerates you, I will present it to the proper authorities. Is that acceptable? More than acceptable? Thank you, Mr. Wolfe. Don't thank me yet. Mr. Goodwin will take your statement names, addresses, dates, everything you know about Victor Marsh and his murder. Tomorrow morning, he will investigate. After that, we'll see. Whether your innocence is a fact or merely a fond hope. After Bannister left with considerably less panic than he'd arrived with, they looked at Wolfe and said, Well, what do you believe him? I believe he's frightened. Whether he's frightened because he's innocent or because he's guilty remains to be determined. He picked up his book. But there's something curious about this case, Archie. What's that? Victor Marsh was blackmailing Theodore Bannister for $50,000. But blackmailers don't usually get themselves murdered before they collect their final payment. They wait, they collect, and then they disappear. They demand more money. This suggests that Victor Marsh's murder had nothing to do with Theodore Bannister's blackmail problem. Then why was he killed? That, Archie, is what you're going to find out tomorrow. Starting with Victor Marsh's office, his associates, and his enemies, of which, I suspect, there were many. He opened his book and dismissed me with a wave. I went to my desk and started organizing my notes. Somewhere in the Hartley building on Madison Avenue, a blackmailer had been shot and robbed. And somewhere else, maybe in that same building, somewhere else entirely, killer was congratulating themselves on a murder that looked like a simple robbery. Too simple. It's probably because in my experience, when something looks too simple, in a case involving Nero Wolfe, it usually means the truth is so complicated that even Wolfe might not see it coming. Wednesday morning, I arrived at the Hartley building at 9:30. Wolfe was still upstairs communing with his orchids, and probably complaining to Theodore, the orchid nurse, about having to work for a living. The Hartley building was one of those Madison Avenue establishments that tries very hard to look artistic and sophisticated. Lots of marble, lots of glass, and a directory that read like a who's who of galleries, critics, and people who made money telling other people what art was worth looking at. The third floor was still cordoned off with police tape. But the officer guarding the elevator recognized my name from previous cases and let me through with minimal grumbling. Victor Marsh's office turned out to be a storage room in the back of the Kellerman Gallery, a converted closet with a desk, a chair, and approximately enough space to change your mind, but not your clothes. Inspector Kramer was there, along with two plainclothes detectives and enough cigarette smoke to cure a ham. When he saw me, his expression suggested he'd just bitten into what he thought was chocolate and discovered it was liver. Goodwin, what are you doing here investigating a murder? Same as you, Inspector. Except I'm doing it for a client, and you're doing it for the city. Your client wouldn't happen to be Theodore Bannister, would he? You know, I can't tell you that, which means yes. Stubbed out his cigarette with more force than necessary. Let me save you some time, Goodwin. Theodore Bannister was being blackmailed by Victor Marsh for $50,000. Marsh was killed between 10 and 11 yesterday morning, shot twice with a .32 revolver, robbery staged to cover the motive. Bannister was in his office 2 floors up with no alibi and every reason in the world to want Marsh dead. We're bringing him in for questioning this afternoon. On what evidence? On the evidence that blackmail victims make excellent murder suspects, especially when the blackmail victim is about to lose everything he's worked for and the blackmailer gets killed right before the final payment is due. That's not evidence, Inspector. That's speculation dressed up in a police uniform. It's enough to ask questions. If Bannister's innocent, he'll answer them and go home. If he's guilty, he'll make mistakes and we'll catch him. Kramer lit another cigarette. Now why don't you go back to Wolfe and tell him to stay out of this? It's an open and shut case. If it's open and shut, Inspector, why are you still here looking for evidence? He glared at me but didn't answer, which meant I'd hit a nerve. I looked around the office, or what was left of it after Kramer's men had torn it apart. The desk had been searched, the drawers emptied, papers scattered everywhere, a chalk outline. On the floor marked where Marsh had fallen. What was taken in the robbery? I asked. Wallet, watch, some cash from the desk drawer. Classic robbery. Classic. Except the killer left behind a gold cigarette case worth at least $100. I pointed to it sitting on the windowsill in plain sight. What kind of thief takes a $20 watch but leaves a $100 cigarette case? Kramer looked at the cigarette case, then at me, then at the cigarette case again. The kind who gets interrupted, or panics, or doesn't know what they're looking at. Or the kind who's staging a robbery and doesn't actually care about taking valuables. They just need it to look like a robbery. Which brings us back to Theodore Bannister, who had motive, opportunity, and the intelligence to stage a convincing crime scene. Or it brings us to someone else entirely. Someone who knew about Marsh's blackmail operation and decided to eliminate him for reasons that have nothing to do with art criticism. Kramer's eyes narrowed. What do you know about Marsh's? Other victims? Nothing yet. But blackmailers rarely have just one source of income. If Marsh was squeezing Bannister for $50,000, odds are he was squeezing other people too. We're looking into it. So far, nothing. Marsh lived alone, worked occasional jobs at galleries, kept to himself. No known associates, no visible income beyond what the galleries paid him, which means he was either very good at hiding his blackmail income or he was spending it as fast as he got it. I looked at the scattered papers on the desk. Mind if I look through these? Mind. This is a crime scene, Goodwin, not a lending library. Then I'll go talk to the gallery owner. Unless you've arrested them too. Phyllis Kellerman. She's in her office down the hall. Says she didn't hear the shots, didn't see anything unusual, and is very upset that one of her occasional assistants got himself murdered on her premises. He blew smoke in my direction. Tell Wolfe he's wasting his time, and yours. I left him smoking and went down the hall to find Phyllis Kellerman. The Kellerman Gallery occupied most of the third floor, with white walls, track lighting, and the kind of art that made you wonder if the artist was brilliant or if they just spilled paint and called it a statement. Phyllis Kellerman herself was in her 50s, dressed in black, with gray hair pulled back severely and the kind of face that suggested she'd seen every con, scam, and fraud the art world had to offer and wasn't impressed by any of them. Mr. Goodwin, the police said someone else might come asking questions. I assume you're working for Theodore? I work for Nero Wolfe. Mr. Bannister has retained his services. Same thing. Sit down. She gestured to a chair that looked like it. Had been designed by someone who hated the human spine. What do you want to know? Start with Victor Marsh. How long did he work for you? He didn't work for me, not regularly. Victor showed up maybe once a month, asked if I needed help with installations or cataloging. I'd pay him $50 for a day's work and he'd disappear again. No benefits, no contract, nothing formal. When was the last time you saw him before yesterday? Last week, Thursday, he came in, said he needed to use the office in the back for a few hours, something about meeting a client. I said Feeney wasn't using it. What client? He didn't say. But I saw someone go back there around noon cadent. See who, just heard voices through the door. They talked for maybe 20 minutes, then the person left. Male or female, couldn't tell. The door was closed and I was in the front gallery with customers. Did Marsh seem worried? Nervous, Victor? Always seemed nervous. Like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. But last week he was different, excited, almost smug. Like he'd finally gotten something he'd been after for a long time. Money? Probably. Victor was always desperate for money. Borrowed from everyone, never paid it back, always had some scheme that was going to make him rich. It never did. Did you know he was blackmailing people? Her expression didn't change.
Oh.
I suspected. Victor knew everyone's secrets. He'd been around the art world long enough to hear all the gossip, see all the scandals. I figured he was using that information somehow, but I didn't ask, and he didn't tell. Did you know about Theodore Bannister? Theodore reviewed his nephew's work without disclosing the relationship. Everyone in the art world knew. It was an open secret, the kind of thing people whispered about at openings but never mentioned in print. Victor was just the first one stupid enough to try turning it into cash. If everyone knew, why didn't someone expose it years ago? Because everyone in the art world has compromised themselves in one way or another, Mr. Goodwin. Critics who accept gifts from galleries, dealers who inflate prices, collectors who buy fake provenance. We're all complicit in something. Exposing Theodore would just invite others to expose us. It's mutually assured destruction. Nobody wants to be the one who starts the war. Except Victor Marsh. Except Victor. He had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Or so he thought. Lit a cigarette with a kind of casual elegance that suggested decades of practice. Turns out he was wrong. Who else was Marsh blackmailing? If I knew that, I'd have told the police. But Victor was careful. He never mentioned names, never gave details. All I know is that he had money 3 months ago when he shouldn't have. New clothes, expensive dinners, talking about taking a trip to Europe. Something had changed in his financial situation. Now he's dead. And now he's dead. Which either means Theodore Bannister killed him, or someone else Victor was blackmailing. Decided to solve their problem permanently. She looked at me directly. Which do you think it is? I think Nero Wolfe will figure it out. That's why people pay him. I left her smoking and thinking and went back to the brownstone to report to Wolfe, who was in his chair reading about orchids and drinking beer like solving murders was someone else's problem. I got back to the brownstone at 1:15. As Wolfe was finishing lunch, I gave him the full report while he worked on his second bottle of beer and looked like a man contemplating the fundamental absurdity of human nature. So, I concluded, Kramer thinks Bannister did it, the gallery. Owner thinks either Bannister did it or someone else Marsh was blackmailing did it. And I think we're missing something obvious. We are indeed missing something obvious, Archie. We're missing the answer to a very simple question. What question? If Theodore Bannister's ethical lapse was common knowledge in the art world, as Ms. Kellerman claims, why would Victor Marsh believe he could successfully blackmail him? What leverage did Marsh actually have? I thought about it. Maybe Bannister didn't know it was common knowledge. Maybe he thought he'd kept it secret all these years. It's possible, but Theodore Bannister is not a fool. He's been in the art world for 30 years. He would know what people whispered about. He would know his secret wasn't as secret as he hoped. Wolfe leaned back. Oh, Archie, I suspect Victor Marsh had something more than gossip. He had proof-specific, documented proof that would stand up to scrutiny and destroy Bannister's career. Like what? Like financial records showing payments from Bannister to his nephew before the career launched. Like correspondence discussing the arrangement. Like anything that would transform whispered speculation into documented fact. He poured beer. This afternoon, you will visit Daniel Crane, the nephew. I want to know what relationship he had with his uncle, what financial support he received, and whether he knew Victor Marsh. You think the nephew is involved? I think the nephew is the reason this entire situation exists. Whether he's involved in the murder remains to be determined. The phone rang. It was Kramer, and he sounded like a man who'd just bitten into something that was supposed to be sweet and discovered it was vinegar. Goodwin, tell Wolfe, we just found something interesting in Marsh's apartment. What? A safe deposit box key? Turns out Marsh had a box at Manhattan Trust. We got a warrant, opened it this afternoon. Inside were copies of documents financial, records, correspondence, photographs for 4 different people. Theodore Bannister was one of them. Who were the others? It's confidential. But I'll tell you, all 4 of them had motive to kill Victor Marsh, and all 4 of them are being brought in for questioning. He paused. Tell Wolfe his client just became one of 4 suspects instead of one of 1. Doesn't change much, but it's something. He hung up. I reported to Wolfe, who listened with his eyes closed. When I finished, he said, for victims. Ouch. Which means Victor Marsh was running a systematic blackmail operation, not a single desperate scheme. That changes things considerably. How? Systematic blackmail requires systematic record keeping. Marsh kept copies of his evidence in a safe deposit box, which means he was organized, careful, planning for the long term. But it also means he was vulnerable. Anyone who knew about the safe deposit box could break into it, destroy the evidence, eliminate the threat, or they could just kill Marsh. Indeed, which is simpler and more permanent. But it also means the killer either didn't know about the safe deposit box or didn't care that the evidence would still exist after Marsh died. Why wouldn't they care? Because once Marsh was dead, the evidence couldn't hurt them. Dead men don't send letters to editors or show photographs to prosecutors. The evidence in the safe deposit box would prove motive for murder. But it wouldn't expose the original secret, at least, not unless the police made it public, which they typically don't in ongoing investigations. I thought about that. So the killer wasn't trying to destroy the evidence. They were just trying to stop Marsh from using it. Precisely. Which means we're not looking for someone who's desperate to keep a secret. We're looking for someone who was tired of paying for silence and decided to buy it permanently. Wolfe opened his eyes. Visit Daniel Crane Archie, and while you're there, determine whether he knew his uncle was being blackmailed, whether he knew Victor Marsh, and whether he had any reason to want Marsh dead. Daniel Crane's studio was in Chelsea, in one of those converted warehouses where artists pretend they're struggling while actually charging $50,000 for paintings that look like someone sneezed on a canvas. Crane himself answered. The door mid-30s, paint-splattered jeans, expensive haircut. The kind of calculated bohemian look that probably required a stylist and considerable thought. Mr. Goodwin, Uncle Theodore said you might come by. Come in. The studio was exactly what I'd expected. Huge windows, paint everywhere, canvases leaning against walls. The smell of turpentine and expensive coffee. His paintings were abstract lots. Of color, lots of energy, lots of people apparently willing to pay obscene amounts of money for them. Your uncle mentioned you, I said. Said you're doing quite well? I'm doing fine. Better than fine, actually. My last show sold out in 3 days. He poured coffee from an expensive machine. But I assume you're not here to discuss my career? I'm here to discuss Victor Marsh. His hand stopped halfway to his coffee cup. Victor, yeah, Uncle Theodore. Told me said he'd been killed. Said the police thought Theodore might have done it. That's insane. Did you know Marsh? I met him a few times. Gallery openings, that sort of thing. He was always hanging around, trying to network, pretending he was important. I didn't like him much. Why not? Because he was bitter. Every conversation was about how the art world was corrupt, how talent didn't matter, how it was all about who you knew and who you could impress. It got old fast. Was he wrong? Daniel smiled, not a happy smile, but the kind that suggests you've just heard Anne. Uncomfortable truth. No, he wasn't wrong. The art world is corrupt. Talent does matter, but connections matter more. And knowing the right people, getting the right reviews, having the right dealers, that's what makes careers. He sipped his coffee. But Victor's problem wasn't that he understood the system. His problem was that he thought understanding it entitled him to success. It doesn't. You still have to be good. And Victor wasn't good. Victor was terrible. His paintings looked like a child's finger paintings, except less interesting. No vision, no technique, no reason for anyone to care. But he couldn't accept that. He thought the world owed him recognition, and when it didn't come, he got angry. Angry. Enough to blackmail people? I wouldn't know about that. Your uncle says Marsh was blackmailing him. Says Marsh found out Theodore reviewed your first show without disclosing your relationship. Says Marsh demanded $50,000 to keep quiet. Daniel set down his coffee cup carefully. I didn't know that. Theodore never told me. Would it surprise you? It would devastate me. If Theodore compromised his integrity for MIF, my career was built on a lie. He stopped, took a breath. Mr. Goodwin, I'm successful because I'm talented. Not because my uncle wrote one review 10 years ago. Yeah, I've had 100 reviews since. Then, from critics who don't know me, who have no reason to favor me, they liked my work because it's good. But that first review launched your career. That first review got people to look at my work. What kept them looking was the quality. Theodore's review opened a door. I walked through it on my own merit. Does everyone see it that way? I don't care how everyone sees it. I know the truth. Victor Marsh know the truth. Victor Marsh didn't care about truth. He cared about money and revenge and making people who'd succeeded feel as miserable as he did. Daniel looked at me directly. If someone killed him, I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised it took this long. Where were you yesterday morning? Between 10 and 11? Here working. Alone. No alibi. No witnesses. Same as everyone else, apparently. He gestured at the canvases. I'm preparing for a show next month. I've been working 12-hour days for weeks. Did you kill Victor Marsh? No, but I'm not sorry he's dead. I left him painting and thinking and went back to the brownstone. Where? In Manhattan. 3 other blackmail victims were having similar conversations with police detectives, giving similar non-alibis, expressing similar non-grief about Victor Marsh's death. And somewhere else, the killer was congratulating themselves on a murder that everyone had a motive for, but nobody had an opportunity to commit. When I reported to Wolfe, he listened with his fingers interlaced and his eyes closed. When I finished, he said one word: interesting. What's interesting? Daniel Crane's reaction. He wasn't surprised that his uncle was being blackmailed. Wasn't outraged. He was devastated not because Marsh was dead, but because his career might be tainted by his uncle's deception. So that suggests Daniel Crane cares more about his reputation than about justice or family loyalty. That's useful information. Useful how? Useful in understanding why Victor Marsh was killed. Archie, bring me the phone. I need to call Theodore Bannister. I brought him the phone. He dialed, waited, and when Bannister answered, said, Mr. Bannister. This is Nero Wolfe. I have one question for you. When Victor Marsh first approached you with his blackmail demand, what exactly did he say he would do if you didn't pay? I couldn't hear Bannister's answer, but I saw Wolfe's expression change. The small tightening around his eyes that means something important has just clicked into place. I see. Thank you, Mr. Bannister. That's very enlightening. He hung up and looked at me with the expression of a man who's just solved a crossword puzzle that everyone else thought was impossible. Archie, Victor Marsh didn't threaten to expose Theodore Bannister to the Times. He threatened to expose him to Daniel Crane, his nephew. Why would that matter? Crane would be upset, but he couldn't fire Bannister from the Times. No, but he could publicly disown him. He could hold a press conference, denounce his uncle's deception, distance himself from the tainted review. He could turn the scandal from a story about Theodore Bannister's ethical lapse into a story about Daniel Crane's integrity and independence. Wolfe leaned back. Victor Marsh was cleverer than we thought. He understood that Theodore Bannister didn't fear losing his job. He feared losing his relationship with his nephew. That was the real leverage. So Marsh was threatening their relationship, not Bannister's career.
Precisely.
Which means the person with the most to lose from that exposure wasn't Theodore Bannister, it was Daniel Crane. If the story became public, Crane's reputation would be damaged. People would question whether his success was earned or manufactured. Galleries would reconsider showing his work. Collectors would doubt his authenticity. So Crane had motive to kill Marsh. Crane had excellent motive. But did he have opportunity? Wolfe picked up his beer. Tomorrow, Archie, you will verify Daniel Crane's alibi. Find out if he was really in his studio yesterday morning. 2 neighbors, delivery people, anyone who might have seen him. If he's lying about where he was, we'll know. If he's telling the truth, then we're looking at someone else entirely. What about the other 3 blackmail victims? Kramer said there were 4 people in Marsh's safe deposit box. The other 3 are the police's concern, not ours. We're only interested in Theodore Bannister's innocence or guilt. Everything else is merely context. He opened his book. Now leave me alone. Fritz is preparing osa buka for dinner, and I need to prepare myself mentally for the experience. Thursday morning, I spent 3 hours in Chelsea talking to everyone who might have seen Daniel Crane on Wednesday. The bodega owner 2 doors down remembered seeing Crane leave his studio around 9:30 carrying a portfolio case. The coffee shop owner across the street confirmed Crane came in around 9:45, bought coffee and a croissant, left 10 minutes later. After that, nothing. No neighbors saw him return. No delivery people knocked on his door. Daniel Crane's alibi for the time of the murder, 10 to 11 a.m., was as solid as smoke. I reported this to Wolfe at lunch while he worked through Fritz's chicken and wine sauce and looked like a man who'd just discovered an interesting inconsistency in the universe. So Crane left his studio at 9:30, bought coffee, and then disappeared for at least 2 hours. Could have taken the subway to Madison Avenue, killed Marsh, and been back at his studio by noon. Could have, but did he? Wolfe dabbed at his lips with his napkin. Call Inspector Kramer. Ask him what time the shots were heard. I called. Kramer was in a meeting, but his sergeant told me the shots were heard at approximately 10:15 by a receptionist on the 4th floor. 2 shots, close together, like firecrackers going off. I reported this to Wolfe 10:15, which gives Crane plenty of time to get from Chelsea to Madison Avenue, kill Marsh, and stage the robbery. Also gives Theodore Bannister plenty of time to walk down 2 flights of stairs, kill Marsh, and walk back up. And it gives the 3 other blackmail victims plenty of time to do the same, assuming they had access to the building. He poured beer. The problem, Archie, is that we're focusing on opportunity when we should be focusing on psychology. What do you mean? Think about the crime scene. Victor Marsh was shot twice at close range. The killer then staged a robbery, took the wallet, the watch, left the expensive cigarette case. This suggests someone who was thinking clearly, acting methodically, covering their tracks. That's not the behavior of someone in a rage or panic. That's the behavior of someone executing a plan. So the killer planned it in advance, obviously. But here's what's interesting. The killer used a .32 revolver. Do you know what that suggests? They had access to a gun. They had access to a small, easily concealed gun. Not a hunting rifle or a target pistol, a weapon designed for close quarters self-defense or more ominously for criminal purposes. Where does an art critic or an artist obtain such a weapon? Black market, illegal dealer, or they already owned it.
Precisely.
Which means we're looking for someone with either criminal connections or a history of needing personal protection. Does that sound like Daniel Crane or Theodore Bannister? I thought about it. No. Crane's a successful artist. Bannister's a respected critic. Neither of them seems like the type to have a .32 revolver in their desk drawer. Exactly. Which suggests our killer is not who we think it is. He leaned back. Call Inspector Kramer again. Ask him about the other 3 blackmail victims. Who are they? What were they being blackmailed for? And do any of them have criminal records or connections? I called. Kramer, grumbling, told me the other 3 victims were Marcus Webb, a gallery owner who'd been selling paintings with false provenance; Helen Ashford, a collector who'd defrauded an insurance company over a stolen painting; and James Denton, an art dealer who'd been involved in a smuggling operation 15 years ago. All 3 have alibis, Kramer said. All 3 claim they were nowhere near the Hartley building yesterday morning. All 3 are lying, but we can't prove it yet. I hung up and reported to Wolfe. His eyebrows had climbed approximately 2 millimeters, which for him was equivalent to standing up and applauding. Art smuggling, insurance fraud, false provenance. And Theodore Bannister, with his nephew's compromise review. He closed his eyes. Archie, what do all 4 of these victims have in common? They're all art world professionals who did something unethical or illegal. Yes, but more specifically, they all benefited financially from their crimes. Webb sold fake provenance paintings for inflated prices. Ashford defrauded insurance for money. Denton smuggled art for profit. And Bannister helped launch his nephew's lucrative career. They all made money from their deceptions. So Victor Marsh was blackmailing them for a share of that money. He wasn't trying to punish them or expose them out of moral outrage. He was simply taking what he believed he deserved, cut of their ill-gotten gains. Wolfe opened his eyes. But here's what's curious. Marsh was demanding different amounts from each victim. From Bannister, $50,000. From the others, he paused. Call Kramer again. Ask him how much Marsh was demanding from Webb, Ashford, and Denton. I called. Kramer told me. Webb was paying $10,000, Ashford $20,000, Denton $15,000. Total of $95,000, I said when I hung up. That's a lot of money for a failed artist. It's more than a lot of money, Archie. It's enough to change someone's life. To buy a studio, fund a career, finally achieve the success that Victor Marsh believed he deserved. Wolfe leaned forward. Now here's my question. If Marsh was systematically collecting nearly $100,000 from 4 victims, why did he suddenly demand the final payments all at once? Why tell Bannister he needed $25,000 immediately? Why create urgency? Maybe he needed the money for something specific. Or maybe someone else needed the money. Someone who knew about the blackmail. Someone who was pushing Marsh to collect faster, to demand more, to close out his operations and move on. The phone rang. It was Kramer, and his voice had the tone of a man who just discovered his suspect was actually a victim. "Goodwin, we found something in Marsh's apartment. Letters. From his sister. She's been in a private hospital for the past 6 months cancer treatment. The bills are astronomical. Marsh was paying for everything. How much? So far, about $70,000. With more treatments needed. The letters beg him to stop, say. She'd rather die than have him destroy himself trying to save her. The last letter is dated 3 days ago." He paused. Marsh wasn't blackmailing people to get rich. Goodwin. He was blackmailing people to keep his sister alive. I hung up and looked at Wolfe, who was sitting perfectly still, his eyes closed, his face showing absolutely nothing. "Victor Marsh was paying for his sister's cancer treatment," I said. $70,000 so far, more needed. That's why he demanded the final payments. He was desperate. Not desperate. Archie, dying. Or rather watching someone he loved die, and trying to prevent it? Wolfe's voice was soft twitch for him, meant something had touched. Whatever small part of him was capable of human sympathy, which changes everything. How? Because we've been assuming Victor Marsh was a villain. A bitter, failed artist extorting money from successful people to fund his own comfort? But he wasn't. He was a man trying to save his sister's life by any means necessary. Doesn't excuse the blackmail, but it explains it. It also doesn't change the fact that someone killed him. No, but it changes why someone killed him. Think Archie if Marsh was paying for his sister's treatment. And if the treatments were ongoing, then Marsh couldn't afford to be exposed, couldn't afford to be arrested, couldn't afford to be stopped. Which means the killer wasn't just stopping. The blackmail, they were essentially killing Marsh's sister too. That's cold. That's murder, Archie. It's always cold. He opened his eyes. "Call Daniel Crane. Tell him I need to see him immediately. Tell him it's urgent. It's about his uncle. And if he doesn't come, Theodore Bannister will be arrested by..." Morning. Daniel Crane arrived at the brownstone at 6 o'clock, looking nervous and defiant in equal measure. Wolfe was in his chair, freshly descended from his session with the orchids, wearing a yellow shirt and the expression of a man about to perform surgery without anesthesia. "Mr. Crane, sit down." Crane sat in the red leather chair. I took my position. At my desk, notebook ready. "Mr. Crane," Wolfe began, "where were you Wednesday morning between 10 and 11? Told Mr. Goodwin I was in my studio. You were not. You left your studio at 9:30, purchased coffee, and then disappeared. For 2 hours. Where did you go?" Crane's face flushed. "I went for a walk. I needed to clear my head. I was stuck on a painting. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with it." "Where did you walk?" "Around. Chelsea, the village, just walking." "Did anyone see you?" "I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. I was thinking about work." Wolfe leaned back. "Mr. Crane, I'm going to tell you what I believe happened Wednesday morning. You left your studio at 9:30. You took the subway to Madison Avenue. You went to the Hartley building, used the stairs to avoid being seen, and you entered Victor Marsh's office. You shot him twice with a .32 revolver that you'd obtained illegally, I assume specifically for this purpose. You then staged a robbery to make it look like a random crime. And you returned to your studio by noon, where you resumed working as if nothing had happened. That's insane." "I didn't kill anyone. Then where did you go Wednesday morning?" Crane's jaw tightened. "I can't tell you. Can't or won't."
Can't.
"It's private, personal, nothing to do with the murder." Wolfe studied him for a long moment. Then he said very softly, "Mr. Crane, did you know that Victor Marsh was using the blackmail money to pay for his sister's cancer treatment?" The color drained from Crane's face. "What?" "Marsh's sister has been in a private hospital for 6 months. The treatment costs are enormous. Marsh was paying for everything, nearly $100,000 so far. The blackmail wasn't about revenge or greed. It was about saving his sister's life. I didn't know that, and yet you benefited from his death. With Marsh gone, the threat to your reputation is gone. Your uncle's secret remains buried, your career continues untainted.
How for?
The modest price of one failed artist's life. Wolfe's voice turned cold. That was worth it, wasn't it, Mr. Crane? I didn't kill him. Crane was on his feet now, his voice shaking. Yes, I'm glad he's dead. Yes, I wanted him gone. But I didn't. Kill him, I was. He stopped, took a breath. Wednesday morning, I was with someone I can't name publicly. Someone whose reputation would be destroyed if our relationship became known. We were at their apartment in Midtown. We'd been meeting there twice a week for 6 months. Secret, it's private, and it has nothing to do with Victor Marsh or blackmail or murder. Give me their name. I can't. Then you'll be arrested for murder. Then I'll be arrested. But I won't destroy someone else's life to save my own. That's not who I am. Wolfe looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, Mr. Goodwin, call this. Person, verify the alibi. If it's genuine, Mr. Crane is free to go. If it's not, call Inspector Kramer. Crane, shaking, gave me a name and phone number. I called. The Persani won't mention who, because Wolfe keeps confidences, and so do I. Confirmed that Daniel Crane had been with them. Wednesday morning from 9:30 until noon, Crane's alibi was real, which meant someone else had killed Victor Marsh. After Daniel Crane left, Wolfe sat in silence for 5 full minutes. Then he said, Archie, call Inspector Kramer. Tell him I'll solve his case for him tomorrow morning at 11. Tell him to bring Theodore Bannister. And tell him he paused. Tell him to bring the evidence from Victor Marsh's safe deposit box. All of it. Every document for every victim. Why? Because Victor Marsh didn't expect to be murdered, Archie. People who don't expect to die often leave clues in places they think are safe. I called Kramer, who grumbled and agreed. Then I looked at Wolfe and said, You know who killed Marsh? I know who must have killed him. Proving it will require a small demonstration. He picked up his book. Now leave me alone. I need to think. About how to trap a killer who's already succeeded perfectly. Friday morning at 11 o'clock, my office looked like a courtroom. Kramer was there with 2 of his detectives. Theodore Bannister sat in the red leather chair, looking 10 years older than when he'd first walked through our door. Daniel Crane had returned, standing near the wall like a man waiting for a verdict. And in 3 other chairs sat Marcus Webb, Helen Ashford, and James Denton, the other blackmail victims, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Wolfe surveyed them with the expression of a magistrate examining criminals and victims and trying to determine which was which. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here because Victor Marsh was murdered Wednesday morning, and because the police, despite their best efforts, have failed to determine who killed him. I will now remedy that failure. It's better be good, Wolfe. Kramer growled. It will be adequate, Inspector. Which is all one can expect when dealing with human folly. He poured beer with deliberate precision. Let me begin by explaining what Victor Marsh was. He was not, as everyone assumed, a bitter failure using blackmail to punish his betters. He was a desperate man using the only leverage he had to save his sister's life. His blackmail was not about revenge. It was about survival. That doesn't make it legal, Webb said. No, but it makes it understandable. Understanding motive is the first step to understanding murder. Wolfe leaned forward. Victor Marsh was blackmailing for people. Each of you had committed crimes or ethical violations in the art world. Each of you was paying him to remain silent. And each of you had excellent reason to want him dead. We all have alibis, Ashford said quickly. Do you? Let's examine them. Mr. Webb, you claim you were at your gallery on 57th Street Wednesday morning? Your assistant confirms this. Your assistant is your nephew who would lie to protect you, Ms. Ashford. You claim you were at home with your housekeeper. But housekeepers are employees easily pressured to provide false testimony, Mr. Denton. You claim you were meeting with a client in Brooklyn. But the client is a business associate with every reason to support your alibi. He turned to Bannister. And you, Mr. Bannister, claim you were in your office 2 floors above where Marsh was killed, working alone on a review. No witnesses, no alibi, and every reason to want Marsh dead. Inspector Kramer believes you're the killer. Your nephew believes you're innocent. I believe he paused. I believe you're all missing the obvious. What's the obvious? Kramer demanded. None of you killed Victor Marsh, because none of you could have. The room went silent. Think about the crime, Inspector. Marsh was shot at 10:15 with a .32 revolver. The killer then staged a robbery, taking specific items, but leaving valuable items behind. This suggests someone who knew what would make a convincing robbery, someone familiar with crime scenes, with police procedures, with what evidence would be sought and what would be overlooked. So none of these people have that knowledge? They're art dealers, critics, collectors. Their expertise is in paintings and sculptures, not murder. When they commit crimes, they commit sophisticated frauds, false provenance, insurance schemes, ethical violations. They don't shoot people at close range and stage crude robberies. Then who did? Wolfe turned to the pile of documents on his desk, the evidence from Marsh's safe deposit box that Kramer had brought. He picked up one folder, opened it, and read silently for a moment. This is Theodore Bannister's file. Right. It contains financial records showing payments from Bannister to his nephew, correspondence discussing the nephew's career, photographs of family gatherings, standard blackmail evidence. He set it down and picked up another folder. This is Marcus Webb's file. False. Provenance documents, expert testimonies, sales records, also standard. He picked up a third folder. This is Helen Ashford's file. Insurance claims, police reports, photographs of the supposedly stolen painting that was actually hidden in her storage unit. Again, thorough, professional, exactly what one would expect. Picked up the fourth folder, James Denton's, opened it, and his eyebrows rose. This, however, is different. This file contains not just evidence of art smuggling from 15 years ago, which Denton has already served time for, but new evidence. Recent evidence. Photographs taken within the past 6 months showing Denton meeting with known smugglers, handling suspicious packages, conducting business that suggests he's returned to his criminal activities. Denton's face went white.
Not I haven't you.
Have. And Victor Marsh knew. But here's what's interesting. Marsh was only charging you $15,000, the smallest amount of all for victims. Why would he charge less for more serious crimes? Unless Wolfe leaned back, unless he wasn't the one setting the price. What do you mean? Kramer asked. I mean, Victor Marsh had a partner who helped him gather evidence, organize the blackmail, collect the payments, someone who had the criminal expertise to make the operation work, someone who knew about smuggling, about fencing stolen goods, about where to find information and how to use it. He looked directly at Denton. Someone like you, Mr. Denton. That's insane. Is it you and Marsh worked together? You provided the criminal expertise, told him how to organize his blackmail, how to approach victims, how to collect money safely. In exchange, Marsh agreed to charge you less than the others, $15,000 instead of $50,000. A professional. Courtesy between partners. You can't prove that, can't I? Inspector Kramer, examine Mr. Denton's alibi more carefully. I suspect you'll find that his client in Brooklyn is actually a fence he's been working with. I suspect you'll find that Mr. Denton has been running a smuggling operation under cover of his legitimate art dealing. And I suspect he paused dramatically. I suspect that Victor Marsh discovered his partner was cheating him. That Denton was smuggling valuable pieces without sharing the profits. That Marsh threatened to expose Denton not just to the police for old crimes, but for new ones. And that Denton decided his partner had become a liability. Amer was already moving. James Denton, you're under arrest. Wait, Denton was on his feet, backing toward the door. You don't understand? Victor was going to ruin everything? He said his sister needed more money, that he wanted a bigger share. I built that operation. I brought in the clients. He wanted to take it all because his sister was sick. Oh, you killed him, Wolfe said calmly. I had to. He was going to. Expose me. Going to tell the police about the new smuggling operation unless I paid him more. I wouldn't let him destroy me because he couldn't let go of someone who was already dying. Where's the gun? Kramer asked. In the river. This river off Pier 47. I threw it there Wednesday afternoon. Denton's face crumbled. Didn't want to kill him, but he left me no choice. He was going to take everything. Kramer's detectives had him in handcuffs within 30 seconds. As they led him away, still protesting that he'd had no choice, Wolfe turned to Theodore Bannister. "Mr. Bannister, you're free to go. Your nephew's reputation is intact. Your own reputation can be preserved, and Victor Marsh's sister will," he paused. "Inspector, what will happen to Marsh's sister?" "The hospital will keep treating her as long as they can. After that." Kramer shrugged. "I don't know. That's not my department. Should be someone's department." Wolfe looked at Bannister. "Mr. Bannister, you've been paying Victor Marsh $5,000 a month for 3 months. I suggest you continue those payments, but redirect them to his sister's hospital. As an anonymous donation, if you prefer. It won't buy back your integrity, but it might salvage your humanity." Bannister stood slowly. "I'll do that, Mr. Wolfe. Thank you." After everyone left, Kramer lingered by the door. "How'd you know it was Denton?" "The file was too complete, Inspector. It contained not just old crimes, but new ones, evidence that required ongoing surveillance, current information, insider knowledge of smuggling operations. Victor Marsh was a failed artist, not a criminal investigator. He couldn't have gathered that evidence alone, needed a partner, and the only person in his blackmail scheme with criminal expertise was James Denton." Wolfe poured beer. "Also, Denton's payment was suspiciously low. Partners always give themselves discounts. You should have been a cop, Wolfe. Should have been many things, Inspector. A cop is not among them." After Kramer left, I looked at Wolfe and said, "You knew. It was Denton from the moment you read that file." "I suspected. Proving it required making Denton believe we had more evidence than we did. Fear makes people confess, Archie. Particularly criminals who believe they've been caught." "What about Victor Marsh's sister? What about her? You think Bannister will really pay for her treatment?" "I think Theodore. Bannister is a fundamentally decent man who made one serious mistake and has been punished sufficiently for it. I think he'll do the right thing." He opened his book. "Now go away. Fritz is preparing duck confit for dinner, and I need to prepare myself mentally for the experience." I sat at my desk and thought about Victor Marsh, not the villain everyone assumed he was, but the desperate man trying to save his sister.
Out.
About James Denton, who'd killed his partner over money and pride. About Theodore Bannister, who'd compromised his integrity for family and was trying to find redemption through anonymous charity, and about Nero Wolfe, who'd solved a case that even he hadn't expected to be so complicated. Archie, Wolfe said, without looking up from his book, "Stop philosophizing. The world is full of people who make terrible decisions for understandable reasons. Our job is not to judge them, merely to determine which terrible decision constitutes murder and which constitutes merely being human. And the difference is, murder kills someone else. Being human kills only oneself, slowly, through compromises and regrets and the accumulated weight of choices one wishes one hadn't made." He turned a page. "Now go help Fritz. He's having difficulty with the sauce, and I want to ensure he doesn't. Ruin dinner while saving the world can wait until tomorrow." I went to help Fritz, leaving Wolfe alone with his book, his beer, and his conviction that humanity was fundamentally flawed, but occasionally worth saving. It was, all things considered, not a bad philosophy, even if it had taken a murder to remind us of it. The end.